Okay, so chapter 9 is over social influence. So, how social situations influence how you behave. Um, I really like this chapter, and I hope you will too. And you'll um, maybe once again start to understand uh, why you do the things you do and why others do things the way they do them. Okay, so first off, what is social influence? Social influence is the many ways people affect one another, including changes in attitudes, beliefs, feelings, and behavior resulting from the comments, actions, or even the mere presence of others. So it's saying someone the actions or presence of someone else is causing you to act in a certain way. That's what social influence is. So there's three different types of social influence that we're going to talk about today. Um, that is conformity, compliance, and obedience. So conformity is changing one's behavior or beliefs in response to explicit or implicit pressure from others. So that's either someone outwardly saying that other people should do this to fit in or whatever, or if it's just kind of an unspoken thing. If you see other people doing it, so you're influenced by them doing it, it's implicit, it's not stated outwardly. So you're conforming to maybe societal pressures, or conforming to the status quo, or conforming to what other people are doing. Next is compliance, and this is responding favorably to an explicit request by another person. So someone is requesting you to do something. Hey, Rachel, can you please go get me a paper towel? Can you please go get me a drink? Can you please? And if I comply with that, I'm not saying that you have to do it. This is a request. So you're responding favorably to an explicit request by another person, and so that is complying. That is compliance. And the next is obedience. It's in an unequal power relationship, submitting to the demands of the person in authority. So this is like me as your instructor, as your the person teaching this class, telling you to do something. I'm telling you to do your journals. I'm telling you to read your syllabus and remember when your tests are. That is me telling you what to do. And because I have, a little bit of power over you as your instructor, there's an unequal power relationship. So you are submitting to the demands that I'm giving. That could be a parent to a child. It could be a police officer to a citizen. It could be really anything. So we've got conformity, compliance, and obedience. The difference between compliance and obedience is the power dynamic, and also whether it's a request or a demand. A demand and an unequal power balance is obedience. A request is compliance. Okay, so first we're going to break down conformity. So, what are some ways we see conformity in our Western culture, which prizes autonomy and uniqueness? In previous chapters, we've talked about how our culture, Westernized culture, independent cultures, prize autonomy and uniqueness. So, how are some ways that we conform, which is the opposite, which is adhering to what other people are doing? What are some ways we see conformity in our Western culture? I want you to think about that. Conformity eliminates potential conflict and makes human interaction much smoother. And it allows us to not have to think so much about every possible action. So instead of constantly having to think about what is the next thing I should be doing. Okay, so let's say you go to a five-star restaurant for dinner, and you've never been to one before. Really the fanciest place you've eaten is maybe a nice steakhouse. So you've never had, all of the fancy napkins, the all the fancy silverware, all the fancy maybe the moist towelettes to wash your hands and wipe your face, and all of those things. You just don't know what to do. Well, if you're conforming to what the other people around you are doing, if you're watching what they're doing and you're just following their lead, you're conforming to what they're doing, then you're not having to think so much about what your next step is, because other people are already doing it, so you're just going to copy what they're doing. So that's kind of an example of showing that if you follow what other people are doing because you feel like they know what they know what they're supposed to be doing, and so if you follow them, you're going to be doing the correct thing as well. So that eliminates potential conflict, because what if you're trying to just if you're not looking around at other people at this five-star restaurant and you're just trying to think about yourself about what you should be doing. If you grab the wrong thing, if you grab the wrong knife, or you grab the wrong spoon, or you forget to do whatever it is, well, then that could create some potential conflict. That could maybe you don't have the correct spoon, or maybe you embarrass yourself, or whatever it is. So to eliminate the possibility of that, you're going to be looking at others around you, and you're going to conform to what they're doing, so you don't have to think so much about every possible action you have to take. And that can play out in many areas of life. It could be what you're wearing, it could be what you're talking about, it could be the way that you act in class, it could be whatever it is. There are many, 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 many ways that we conform in our day to day lives. One form of conformity is called mimicry. This is the most subtle form of conformity, and it's because of our tendency to mindlessly imitate other people's behaviors and movements. And we are all non conscious copycats. So, there are two reasons why we mimic others. So, we're breaking down conformity into mimicry, and then we're breaking down mimicry into two different types of mimicry. The first is ideomotor action. This is the phenomenon whereby merely thinking about a behavior makes performing it more likely. So when we see others behave in a particular way, the idea of that behavior is brought to mind and makes us more likely to behave that way ourselves. Maybe there are some people that that speak a certain way, or that use certain hand gestures. And when you think about that person, then you're more likely to adhere to or conform to their way of speaking and their way of gesturing whenever they speak. Because when we think about it, it creates these neural pathways in our brain that make us do the same thing as well. So you kind of start to become the people you spend the most time around and the people you think about the most. The other kind is reflexive mimicking. We reflexively mimic others to facilitate social interaction. People tend to like those who mimic them more than those who don't, even when they're unaware they're being mimicked. Our tendency to mimic others is strong when we feel a need to affiliate with others and when the others in question are well liked. People like to kind of see themselves in other people. They like to connect, and especially on a shallow surface, we like people who are similar to ourselves. We like people who act similarly, because I think it feels more safe, and it feels like, oh, I know you. I don't have to second guess about what the next thing you're going to do is, because we act and think similarly. So if you're going to kind of mimic someone in the way they talk, the way that they gesture, the way they act, well, then they're going to feel more comfortable around you and like you more, at least at first, because there's that kind of safety and familiarity there, because they kind of see themselves in you. Okay, so there's two types of social influence under conformity that we're going to talk about. The first is informational, and the next is normative social influence. So informational is exactly what it sounds, is you're using information from other people to make a decision, to act a certain way, to think a certain way. So the influence of other people that results from taking their comments or actions as a source of information about what is correct, proper, or effective. So just going back to the five-star restaurant, that would be using informational social influence, because other people who maybe go there often or go to places like that often, well, you're going to be watching their actions as a source of information on what you need to be doing, because what you're seeing is them. You think that they are doing things the correct way, the proper way, um, even if maybe they aren't doing it the right way. You may think that they are. So this the tendency to draw on other people's comments, actions, and opinions as useful sources of information is most pronounced when we are uncertain about what is factually correct or are in unfamiliar situations and are uncertain about how to behave. Of course, if we don't know what we're doing, if we don't know the answer, if we don't know what we should do next, we're going to look around and see what other people are doing to try to conform to that. So we're not sticking out like a sore thumb, so that there's no potential conflict. And so the more unsure you are, the more likely you are to look at other people as sources of information. Normative social influences is the influence of other people that comes from the desire to avoid their disapproval and other social sanctions, such as ridicule or ostracism. People are often reluctant to depart from the norms of society, or at least the norms of the groups they care most about, because they fear the social consequences. Yes, you're afraid of getting made fun of. You're afraid of your friends not wanting to be your friends anymore if you kind of stray from the norm. So you're going to be influenced from what by what is considered to be normal, at least normal as part of the group of people you are a part of. Um, so you're going to reduce the likelihood of you being laughed at or ridiculed or ostracized, because you're going to try to fit in with them because of the societal pressures to be quote unquote normal. So, what are some factors that affect how much pressure you feel to conform to others? So, the first is group size. So, the larger the number of people who express a particular opinion, the more likely that opinion has merit as a source of information, but only to a certain point. Once it gets to a certain number of people, it doesn't really increase the chances anymore. It's just a lot of people. So if let's say this was an in-person class, and I put a multiple choice question up on the smart board for everyone to see. Let's say, like, I think there's 35 people enrolled in this class. So up on the smart board, I have an A, B, C, or D multiple choice question, and everyone has to say out loud what their answer was. And they see, so say someone named Sarah thinks that the answer is C, but 25 other people in the class said it was D. So the answer was D. Well, that many people saying a different answer might sway her to think differently than if three or four people. Let's say not many people showed up to class that day, and there's only 5 people in class. Okay, and 4 people said D, and she said C. She might be a little swayed, but not as much as maybe 10 people or 15 people. If that many people all have the same answer that's not hers, well, then she may be more likely to change her answer than if there are just a few people. Okay, so that kind of leads into group unanimity. So when just one member of a group deviates from the majority, it breaks both informational and normative social influence, because you're saying, at least I've got someone to stand beside me. So let's go back to the multiple choice question. And let's say there are 20 people in the class. Okay. And Sarah wants to choose C, and the other 24 people choose D. Okay. She's probably going to be feel the pressure to change her answer to C, change her answer to D, so that she doesn't feel left out. She doesn't feel stupid in the chance that she's wrong. Well, because then if she's wrong, then everyone else is wrong. Okay, so let's say she wants to choose C, and one other person wants to choose C, and 23 people choose D. Well, then, because at least one other person strayed from the norm, which was choosing the answer D, then that relieves some of the pressure from Sarah to change her answer, because at least she's got one person that agrees with her. Okay. The next is anonymity. Instead of unanimity, this is anonymity. And anonymity actually reduces pressure. So an anonymity eliminates normative social influences and therefore substantially reduces conformity. Because if no one knows what you're saying or what you're doing, then there's no pressure to fit in because no one else is going to know. So maybe the multiple choice question, no one has to say what their answer is. They just submit it and it's anonymous. No one knows. So if Sarah didn't know that everyone else chose D and no one else knows that she's going to choose C, well, then she has absolutely no pressure to conform to what other people are doing because no one's going to know whether she's right or wrong or whether they're right or wrong. No one's going to know what the other person is choosing. So when no one else is aware of your judgment, there's no need to fear the group's disapproval. Okay, next is internalization. This is private acceptance of a proposition, orientation, or ideology. So this is when we don't just mimic a particular response, we adopt a group's perspective. This is caused by informational social influence. So this is instead of just going along with what other people are saying or doing in the moment, and even though you don't really agree with it. So maybe Sarah felt pressure to change her answer to D when 24 out of 25 people chose D, even if she doesn't even really think that D is the correct answer. She's still going to choose D so she's not feeling left out or feeling like the odd man out. Okay, so internalization is taking it a step further than that. Instead of her just changing her answer because everyone else is doing it, which would be both informational but mainly normative social influence, she's actually changing her mind and saying, you know what, I actually think D is the correct answer. I think I was wrong. So you're accepting a proposition or an ideology, or you're accepting that what other people are doing is correct. You are influenced by other people, so much so that it not just changed the way that you acted, it also changed the way that you believed. That's what internalization is. It's not just what's happening on the outside. It's also something that happened on the inside that changed. Normative social influence often has a greater impact on public compliance than on private acceptance, because normative social influence is we want to fit in. It doesn't mean that we necessarily agree with what they're doing or think that other people are doing things the right way. It just means that we want to fit in. Doesn't matter what we think or what we believe. We just want to fit in. So we change our superficial actions, even if they don't align with our thoughts and beliefs. Okay. The next thing that can possibly change the amount of pressure we feel to conform is expertise and status. We grant greater status to those with expertise, and we often assume that those with higher status are experts. Of course, experts are more likely to be right, so we take their opinions more seriously as sources of information. So that'd be informational social influence. So that would affect informational social influence. Status mainly affects normative social influence because someone with status, a lot of people think highly of. They may not be experts, but they have high status. And the disapproval of high status individuals can hurt more than the disapproval of people we care less about. Because if a lot of people look up to them or a lot of people like them, and then we disapprove, and those people disapprove of us, then we feel like lots of people are disapproving of us. It can hurt more than people we care less about. If someone we don't really care much about gets disappointed in us, well, that doesn't really matter. I didn't really care about your opinion anyway. So expertise and status can affect how much pressure we feel to conform in two different ways. Expertise mainly through informational, and status through normative social influence. Culture definitely can play a huge role in whether or not we feel pressure to conform. People reared in interdependent cultures are likely to be more susceptible to both informational and normative social influence. Why do you think this is? From what we've learned about interdependent and independent cultures, why are people reared in interdependent cultures more likely to be susceptible to both types of social influence? Do you think it's because they're so intertwined with other people that they rely on what other people think and feel about them, and it makes more of an impact on their day-to-day lives because these people are their communities, they are their livelihoods, they are so interconnected that what other people think of them makes a huge difference in what they think of themselves and possibly even their livelihoods. Okay, so we're going to break down culture a little bit, and we're going to talk about the difference between a tight and loose culture. So, some cultures described as tight have strong norms regarding how people should behave and don't tolerate departure from these norms. Tight nations are more likely to have governments that are autocratic. This is a ruler with absolute power or dictatorial, absolute power and oppression. Other cultures are described as loose, as their norms aren't as strong and their members tolerate more deviance. And this could, like in the United States, where we have several 50 states, this could also change from state to state, different cultures. But I'd say overall, the United States is a pretty loose culture in terms of how strong of norms we have. Yes, there are norms that we do have that people expect other people to um, withstand and to uphold. But pretty much you can be whoever you want to be. There's a wide range of uh, things and people or and paths that people are allowed to take. There's not really a norm associated with who you can choose to be. In other cultures, pretty much who your parents decided who you're going to be is who you're going to be. You're going to grow up, you're going to do excellent in school, we're going to choose who you're going to marry, you're going to have as many kids as you can have, and you're going to repeat the cycle over and over and over. So there are definitely countries with tighter or looser um, norms. Um, so maybe if you think about from state to state, who would you consider to be tight or loose? Or maybe areas, I would say usually rural towns tend to be a little bit more tight, and big cities tend to be a little bit more loose because there's more people, and people tend to be less judgmental because there's such a wide variety of people that live around, and you're exposed to more on the daily. Um, so some people may say, and you can agree with this or disagree with this, that this is totally fine. Some people may say, well, California has loose culture and Oklahoma has tight. But someone could argue the opposite. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Okay. The next thing that can change how much pressure you feel to conform is your gender. Typically, women are raised to value interdependence and to nurture important social relationships more than men. Men are raised to value autonomy and independence more than women. Because of this, we might expect women to be more subject to social influence than men. The tendency is greatest in face-to-face interactions. Why do you think women are targeted for being a part of MLMs? Because the way that they're marketed is be a part of this group, be a part of this girl boss group, where you can really rely on one another, and we're going to nurture you, and we're going to help you grow, build your business. That speaks to women. The way that men are typically raised in this society is they want to be, they're raised to be more independent, and women are raised to rely on others, friendships, family, whatever it is. Um, because of this, we might expect women to be more subject to social influence than men. The tendency is greatest in face-to-face interactions. Some areas in which you think women conform to men, if we're talking about gender, what are some areas in which you think women conform to men? And this is in general. And I know that there are a lot of women out there who are very knowledgeable in the realm of vehicles. I am not one of them. My husband is. So I'm a very stereotypical example of an area in which I as a woman conform to my husband as a man. Um, Anything to do with cars, I just say, okay, I agree with you, and I will help you, or I will change the way I do something you because you're doing it, and if you're doing it, it must be the correct way. Okay. What are some areas in which you think men conform to women? Could this be, um, in some instances, maybe about fashion or about cooking or about um, beauty or about children or about, I mean, there's lots of areas in which women typically conform to men and men typically conform to women. Think about both informational and normative forms of social influence when you think about this. Okay, and then I think this is the last one, the influence of minority opinion on the majority. So although conformity pressures can be powerful, majority opinion doesn't always prevail. Sometimes minority voices are loud enough to change the prevailing norms. What are some times in history we have seen this take place where the voice of a minority becomes kind of it kind of gets m- magnified, amplified to where it kind of shakes the world. I think of like Martin Luther King Jr. I think of very strong um historical figures that fought against odds, and even if they didn't win right away, they built traction with the things that they said. Um, so there are plenty of times in history we have seen this take place. Okay, next on to breaking down compliance. There are three basic types of compliance approaches that we're going to go through, and I'm going to break each of those down. There's three basic types. One type is directed at the head. The next is directed at the heart, and then the third one is based on the power of norms. So the first one, directed at the head, that's reason-based approaches. You're thinking about it. You're trying to reason in your head, in your brain, um, what decision you should make. And this one is called the norm of reciprocity. This is where a norm dictating that people should provide benefits to those who benefit them. Kind of, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. When someone does you a favor, you have an implied obligation to agree to any reasonable request that person might make in return. So let's say my friend asked me to help them move. They're moving in a week, and they need some help moving their stuff out of their house, and they need some manpower, and you agree to give up your weekend to do that. Well, what if a month later you find out you're moving? And they live close enough to where they could help. Obviously, they don't live like across the country because that would kind of get them off the hook. But you just gave up your weekend to help them move. Shouldn't you be able to expect them to do the same in return for you? That is what the norm of reciprocity is I help you, but you probably should also feel the need to help me should I need it. Okay. That is reason-based approach. Another reason-based approach is reciprocal concessions technique, a compliance approach that involves asking someone for a very large favor that will certainly be refused, and then following that request with one for a small favor. So the smaller favor tends to be seen as a concession, or kind of like giving up but saying, okay, I guess you win, that the target feels compelled to honor. You concede. So maybe this could be, maybe in middle school, you're like, hey mom, we're going on this weekend long field trip for school. We're going to go see some historical landmarks and blah, 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 blah. I really want you to be a sponsor on this overnight 3-day trip to Washington, D.C. And mom's like, heck no, I do not want to be with a bunch of eighth graders for 3 days and 2 nights traveling. That's a no for me. But then you might say, well, then could you at least be the chaperone for our homecoming dance? Well, a 3 or 4 hour dance one evening sounds like a much easier thing to say yes to than a 3 day, 2 night trip to another state. Wouldn't you say? So that is an example of reciprocal concessions technique. There may be ways that you have maybe you ask your parents for 20 bucks and they're like, 20 bucks, heck no. You're like, well, can I at least get $5 for some snacks? Okay, here you go. I $5 seems, but maybe if you would have initially asked for $5, they would have said no. But since you asked for 21st and they said no to that, and then you back off and you say, well, can I at least get five? They might say, okay, well, five is fine. I guess I'll give you $5. That's what reciprocal concessions technique is. And the last one of the reason-based approaches, this one's called foot in the door technique. It's kind of the opposite of the reciprocal concessions. This is a compliance approach that involves making an initial small request with which nearly everyone complies, followed by a larger request involving the real behavior of interest. The idea is that because people agree to the first request, they will also agree to the second request. The key is consistency. And I saw this a lot when I used to work at Northwestern, at the Northwestern Foundation. I was the relationship manager. I worked in fundraising for the university. And you usually don't go right out the gate with asking someone for $100,000 for a new project. No, the first time you reach out to them, you might have dinner with them, you might, get to know them a little bit. And you might ask them to donate to our scholarship drive. It could be 25 bucks, could be $100, could be 1,000. Whatever you whatever you're feeling with that person, with the research you've done, whatever that is. Okay, you get to know them more. They've already said yes to you once. So that's a small request. Yeah, a lot of people will donate to a college scholarship fund for 25 bucks, $100. People that can financially afford that are probably going to do that. Okay. So how do you go from asking someone for $100 or $1,000 to 100,000 to help with a building project? The idea is that people will continue to say yes to you. Like if someone's already said yes to you once, they're more than likely to say yes to you again. So you're getting your foot in the door, you're making that connection, you're making that relationship, you're getting someone to say yes to you once so that they can say yes to you later. And the key is consistency, is that they are more likely to say yes to you for something big if they've already said yes to you for something small. Okay, so the next type of approaches are directed at the heart, and these are based on emotions. So there's mood based, and this is based off of positive moods. A positive mood makes people feel expansive and charitable, like we talked about the broaden and build hypothesis. So they're more likely to agree to reasonable requests. Yeah, remember whenever you wanted to have your friends spend the night, you would wait till your mom was in a good mood, where you asked her, and if your mom was in a good mood, she was more likely to say, yeah, your friend can spend the night. But if mom was in a bad mood, you did not dare ask her if a friend could spend the night because you knew you're going to get a whole lecture. So you're more likely to get what you want when you're requesting something to someone who's in a good mood. A positive mood tends to increase compliance for two main reasons. One, our moods affect how we interpret events. So whenever you're in a good mood and your child asks, can my friend spend the night? You might think, oh, what an excellent opportunity for my child to have some fun with their friend and to make some memories and just fill our house with love. That's maybe what you think when you're in a positive mood. But if you're in a negative mood, then you may be thinking, oh, another kid I have to look after, another mouth I have to feed, they're going to make a mess in my house. So it's going to affect how you interpret the situation. The second reason is we want mood maintenance. It feels good to feel good. So one way to sustain a good mood is to do something good for another person. So if you say yes to your child inviting a friend over, you see how happy they are, and that makes you happy to make someone else happy. Okay, next is negative moods. Certain types of negative moods are likely to increase compliance. Interestingly enough, when people feel guilty, if you're playing on their guilt, they're often motivated to do whatever they can to get rid of that awful feeling. There's something called the negative state relief hypothesis. The idea that people engage in certain actions, such as agreeing to a request, to relieve their negative feelings and to feel better about themselves. So we like to feel good about ourselves. And if we're kind of down in the dumps, if we do something for someone else, it kind of gives us this feeling like, hey, we're a good person. And we made someone else smile, or we made someone else's day. That makes us feel good about ourselves. So sometimes being in a negative mood can increase favor can increase the likelihood that someone does a favor for you, but it really depends on what the request is, what the situation is. um and that's up for you to know that person. Okay, so we talked about one's directed at the head, one's directed at the heart, and now these are based off of the norms, norm-based approaches. So norm-based approaches to compliance are based on the power of social norms. They appeal to both the head and to the heart. So they're both reason-based and emotion-based. Okay, so one of the norm-based approaches is the effective norm-based appeal. This is telling people about social norms is likely to be most effective when the information is surprising, when people have misunderstood a norm. Okay, so maybe you'll say to someone uh, that is not recycling. Maybe you're trying to get someone to recycle. If you told someone that everyone else on the block is recycling, well, then they may say, "Whoa, I I didn't know that. I must have misunderstood. I thought everyone else was dumping their glass bottles and their plastic in the trash just like I am." So telling someone about a social norm that surprises them, it's more likely to be like, "Oh shoot, I really got this one wrong. So I'm going to change my actions and I'm going to start recycling so I can fit in with other people." Okay. And then using descriptive and prescriptive norms. So descriptive norms is when the behavior exhibited by most people in a given context. So when I talked about the recycling, I was using descriptive norms. The behavior is exhibited by most people in a given context. Everyone else in your neighborhood is recycling, so you should too. Um, Prescriptive norms is like writing a prescription. This is something you should do. So when the doctor prescribes some medication, that is something that you should take. So if you're using prescriptive norms, that is something you should do. And this is a way a person is supposed to behave in a given context. Yes, you should recycle so that we're not filling up landfills. To increase compliance, to increase the likelihood that someone is going to do something because you requested them to do it, the two norms should not be placed in conflict with each other. Descriptive and prescriptive should not be conflicting with one another. So, if say with your whole neighborhood recycling, so if you say the whole neighborhood is recycling, but you really shouldn't be recycling, that doesn't really make any sense. Okay, um, but on the other hand, if you say you really should be recycling, but no one else on your block is recycling, well, then you don't really feel the social pressure to recycle because no one else is doing it. So why should you change what you're doing because no one else is? So if everyone is recycling in your neighborhood, and you should recycle because that's the right thing to do, then that's going to even further increase the pressure that someone feels to comply with your request of you should start recycling your glass and your plastics. Okay, so that's using the norm-based approach. So you're kind of you're using reason that this is something you should do, but you're also using emotion, kind of tugging at them, saying, everyone else is doing it too. Okay. Okay, that is the end of chapter 9.